Wednesday. Public Works Committee is meeting Wednesday at 7. All on that one. Okay, next item on
Finance Committee, next Tuesday, that means tomorrow.
But Finance, while we're on the subject of Finance Committee, just, did you want to say anything about the opening for the audit?
Yes, I don't know if you all, if you looked in your box, we are trying to establish the opening meeting with the auditors for next Monday during the day. So whoever can make it out during the day.
That's 10 a.m.
Yeah, it's at 10 a.m.
Which this is when the auditors come in every year to review our books and our operations for the prior year. Elected officials, council members, the mayor, all have a chance to sit down with the auditors and go over any concerns we might have, listen to them on any concerns they might have before the audit gets started, so we all start on the same page. So that has in the past been a very useful meeting.
Is that a public meeting?
That is not...
Only if we have a quorum.
If we have a quorum of council, then it is an open public meeting, and the city is responsible for complying with that. In the past, we have not had a quorum of council present for it. Don't know how many people want to make it this year, but I usually would think we will not have a quorum for that.
6:30 unless you want to work around here. Can't do that.
Okay, discussion items. 14004, medical marijuana moratorium discussion.
Evening, council members and mayor. I believe this is the 5th time I'm coming. The 5th time I believe I'm coming to you to discuss the possibility of a moratorium on medical marijuana, scheduling a public hearing to hear comments on the possibility of extending the moratorium, and also comments on the possibility of including recreational marijuana in the moratorium. The draft ordinance that is in your packet has changes, strikeouts, and additional copy put in it that would add that inclusion. This one is for another 6-month extension. I tried to be as succinct as I could in my agenda bill, but I don't know if you'd like me to give you a brief overview on the subject. Okay, just a brief overview. Medical marijuana has been legal in Washington State, the use of medical marijuana, since 1998 by a general vote in November of 2012. Recreational marijuana was adopted as a allowable use in the state. Unfortunately for us, there is some lack of clarity on how that should be both of them should be regulated, both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, and things are still being sorted out both in the courts. There have been actions taken against one jurisdiction in particular, and probably several others will follow, where the jurisdiction prohibited the use of medical marijuana completely. The State Liquor Control Board is now suggesting that medical marijuana be handled in a similar fashion to recreational marijuana, involving the Liquor Control Board, and that medical marijuana users will have to go to Liquor Control Board stores in order to purchase. So it's rather complicated. I have about 8 inches of papers, both other jurisdictions' responses to this kind of these complex issues, and also updates from the state and sometimes the federal level. As it stands right now, I believe the federal government is sort of stepping back in Washington State and Colorado, and allowing these states to figure it out themselves. To the best of my knowledge, that sort of covers it for us.
On the medical marijuana side, what's the federal government's position on medical marijuana? Did they recognize it as a source of treatment?
Well, this is strange. The use of marijuana is still illegal on a federal level. So I don't think they've been interfering with that, because it's very. I'm a little bit perplexed that it's been legal in our state since 1998, and there's so little guidance on it. So I would have to say that I haven't.
Yeah, my question is, I mean, we know that narcotics are illegal for recreational use, but yet it's being used as medication, and prescribed, and you got pharmacies that are,
right.
Or pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing it and producing it. My question was, is how does the federal government perceive the use of medical marijuana as a valid treatment tool?
Interstate commerce, lack of interstate
Anyone want to
commerce.
answer that?
Yeah, actually.
I know that there's code, Washington State code that's been covering it since 1998, and I don't know how many challenges there have been.
Obviously says it's okay.
Yeah, at the federal level, there are various classes of narcotics, and marijuana is currently classified as having no medical use. They are even extraordinarily difficult to get even testing of medically approved. But at the same time, they do appear to be suggesting to the states that have legalized it that as long as you keep it out of school zones and keep it out of interstate commerce,
right.
they're not going to enforce any of that. So they're sort of turning a blind eye, but that, of course, is always comforting, subject to the whim of the day. Larry?
Right now, the legislature, the state legislature is considering merging medical marijuana with recreational marijuana. And I think until the state figures out what they're going to do, we need to continue the moratorium.
Like with all the moratoriums we've been continuing, we just got to make sure that we're within bounds of the rules, the RCW from extending moratoriums. You know, I'm reading the RCW that was added to the document. It doesn't limit as long as you are continually providing movement, that you're actually working on your interim zoning, you're putting together a package. You have to be able to show, because if we get challenged on that we're not in compliance with the RCW, we could just open ourselves up like the last time where we had that miscue.
What have we done? To John's point, if we're going to extend this for the last 6 months, what's been done to kind of make progress towards?
The Planning Commission at its last meeting looked at some draft regulations for locations where medical marijuana use would be possible, and also potentially recreational marijuana. And there are limits, like not within 1,000 feet from parks, schools, etc. And part of what we're proposing is also not within 1,000 feet of any residential use, which would residential zoning would, and between residential zoning and parks and schools in the King County portion of Pacific would force businesses to locate in Pierce County. In Pierce County, although the zoning is commercial and light industrial, there still are some properties being used as residences. So we got information from utility bills, and I marked out properties that have current residential uses, and that's what we were looking at, was where are some possible locations for these businesses. I know in some other jurisdictions, they have separate zones for the production and also the selling of marijuana. One of the concerns right now that we have is that, as everybody probably knows, we had a lapse in our moratorium at one point in time, and the business did locate here between the end of one moratorium and the beginning of another. Right now, our business license code says if it's illegal on a city, state, or federal level, no licenses will be issued, and then we come into the area of what if it's a nonprofit. So I think it's important to include the recreational marijuana in the moratorium at this point in time while we see how things are settled on a legal level, and also if we can get some better direction from the state.
And do the two businesses that are here now fall within the requirements of being 1,000 feet from not just schools, it's schools and parks and daycares, and there's a big list of them, do they?
Not if we consider the Stewart Road Trail as a linear park, and that's something that I have to get some clarity on, because that would put them within that area. And there are, I will check, but I don't think there's any residential use within that, within 1,000 feet of there, unless someone is living at Mr. Cole's property on Valentine. I don't know if he's using that as a residence, but it's also a business.
Well, the other question I understand we've been doing this related to medical marijuana, but now with the state law passing for the recreational use, and the fact that there's a large body of people looking for locations to grow for that and to spend, do we need to expand the moratorium to not just include medical marijuana, but are we looking at the use of marijuana other than medical purposes?
Yes, if you look at the draft ordinance, which is typed into the last ordinance, I've added the use of the processing, production, right, for recreational as well.
I see that. Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that we have to expand that.
I know we're looking at what is the state going to do and how are they going to prepare things, but as a city, we see it as a revenue stream for the city, and rather than waiting, can't we be a little proactive in determining where we would want a business or a grow operation in the city, and what's an acceptable place to put it, and start work on that, so that, yeah, we can extend the moratorium and find out where these things are going to happen, but at least work toward, instead of just putting it on the back burner and waiting for everyone else to decide what they're going to do. Let's be I think we should be a little proactive, decide where we could accept a place like this that's acceptable for us, and instead of having a generic 1,000 feet from everything that we put on the list, determine what's realistic. Schools and parks, yeah, but maybe we can reduce that buffer a little for, residential areas, or, instead of forcing it into a light industrial area, if we got a business area or a business park that it can be taken care of in, then let's look at places like that.
That's part of what the exercise was about, was identifying areas that were outside of those limits, and also had the zoning that would accommodate that kind of business. So yes, and that's what the Planning Commission is charged with, because we need a Plan A and a Plan B, and we can't judge how the City Council will weigh in on this until we have a public hearing, and so we need alternatives. So these areas are being identified. Also, the last thing that I read before I moved out of the I think it was the Association of Washington Cities website is a call to jurisdictions to start pressuring the state liquor control board to make it more financially, what's the word? Provide more financial incentive for cities, because it appears at this point in time that there isn't much to be gained from cities in portion of taxation, if anything, from these businesses.
Not profitable for the city.
No.
Well,
Correct. Well, it's mostly all the state.
They want to go on. Paul, have we, with the recent transition in Colorado, I know that Denver primarily, they've done some, and very recently, they opened up their shop, so to speak. Are we monitoring what's going on in Colorado and their activities, because they're kind of trailblazing a little bit quicker than we are right now.
the gentleman that called me today inquiring about locating here said he's been to Colorado and they seem to have their act together. So I can't weigh in on that myself, but I will take a look at it and see.
It's just another area. I mean, right now we're Colorado and Washington are really kind of paving the way while the rest of the country is watching us. And, you know, looking at where we're at and what I see is mostly this is going to fall, if we decide to allow it, I think it's ultimately going to end up in the MIC area. You know, there's not really anywhere else that we really want, or not within around, you know, housing and things like that. That's going to end up over in the light industrial.
For production at least, and retail is still a, still a question, but there's
between all the parks we have, residential, school.
Right. Most likely to succeed in Pierce County. Even if you look at the light industrial on Frontage Road, there's residential is really close, and so that's something for council to talk about. I did notice that another jurisdiction, I've looked at several ordinances that the jurisdictions have passed, that it was 600 feet from a residence, and then 1,000 from these other uses.
Well, the other thing I see, if we allow a business like this, then we're going to most likely have some crime associated with it, because you're going to see people trying to break in and get something. And if there's no money for the city, then, you know, what's our options? I mean, can we, you know, obviously we don't have to allow businesses to operate, but then can we also keep marijuana illegal for the recreational use? Just because the state does it, we can.
This is what this one paragraph about Association of Washington Cities. AWC has made seeking a share of marijuana revenue a priority for the 2014 legislative session. The initiative directed where the revenue generated by the new marijuana excise taxes would go, but left out local governments. Cities believe this needs to be corrected. So they're basically encouraging cities to lobby to have that corrected. Otherwise, it's true that there will be probably some additional expenses. I think one of the operations that opened up on Stewart has already been broken into at least once. So it could be a problem.
Speaking of AWC, our new insurance requires that we consult with them closely before taking any action on any moratorium. I'm assuming that we have.
Please call tomorrow. Yes, we've been talking about setting this draft language to them and getting feedback from them on it, and I'm grateful that we have those resources.
And maybe one of the things why this is on the agenda tonight is we have to have the public hearing, and then our next workshop will probably have a special meeting, so if we do decide to approve the moratorium, so there isn't a lapse, we don't have time to wait until our next regular meeting. So,
we would have to move this forward to the next council meeting to set the date for a public hearing. This current moratorium expires on or before February 12th. And so we would probably do best to schedule a public hearing for February 3rd, which is a workshop, and to take action on the 10th, which is cutting it close, or special meeting.
Public hearing.
But we do need the lead time to schedule a public hearing. I think there is some slack in here. The language also is kind of confusing, is that I believe we do have 60 days to have the public hearing, but it's probably prudent to do it in advance rather than taking an action and then getting feedback.